Okay, let's unpack this. Health tech, electric vehicles, and Bitcoin.
Yeah, it sounds like a really weird mix on the surface.
Totally. Like ingredients for a strange smoothie, right?
Yeah.
But if you sort of look at how some companies are starting to think about their assets, well, there's some genuinely surprising connections emerging.
It's really intriguing, isn't it? Seeing companies, from outside the usual finance or big tech circles making these kinds of moves into Bitcoin.
Hmm.
It suggests maybe a broader understanding or perhaps application of what Bitcoin could mean for a business.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We've got this Swedish health tech firm, H100, and also a Chinese EV retailer, Jiuzi Holdings.
Right.
Both have recently been in the news because of their Bitcoin strategies. We're working off a recent news report that honestly made us stop and think.
Yeah, these aren't the names you'd immediately associate with crypto, are they? H100, they're Swedish, focused on health tools for individuals looking for alternatives.
Alternatives to what they call the reactive health system.
Exactly. So think people really focused on preventative care, personalized wellness, that kind of thing.
And then totally different space. You've got Jiuzi Holdings. They're listed on Nasdaq in the U.S., but they operate as an EV retailer in China.
So yeah, quite the contrast. Different
Yeah.
industries, different parts of the world.
But both ending up looking at Bitcoin.
And the details of how they're getting involved are pretty telling. H100, for instance, they announced an initial buy.
Okay.
It was 4.39 Bitcoin. That cost them about 5 million Norwegian krona, which is roughly 490,000 US dollars.
And the price they paid per Bitcoin.
It averaged out to around $111,785 per coin.
Wow. Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, right? The market reaction. After that announcement, H100 stock, it shot up.
Yeah, on the Nordic growth market, a massive 37% jump.
37%. It closed at 1.22 Swedish krona, which, okay, is still only just over 10 US cents, but still.
Yeah, context matters there, too. The report pointed out that this big jump, it helped them recover some lost ground.
Right.
Their stock had actually fallen over 46% in the 2 months just before this. So, the market clearly grabbed onto this Bitcoin news very strongly.
Definitely. And the CEO, Sander Anderson, he gave some reasoning for it. He talked about this connection between Bitcoin's sort of core idea of individual sovereignty.
Right, like controlling your own assets.
Exactly. And the mindset of their customers, who are apparently already looking for more control over their health, outside the traditional system.
That's a really interesting angle, that alignment he's drawing between like the Bitcoin ethos of individual control and people proactively managing their health.
Yeah.
It suggests there might be this overlap in values, something that could really resonate with their target audience.
He even posted on X, Twitter, calling this first purchase phase 1.
Oh, interesting. So more to come potentially.
Seems like it. Strongly suggests they might be planning more crypto buys. Makes you wonder, is Bitcoin just like another asset on their books?
Or could it be something more integrated, like part of their actual strategy down the line?
Right.
Yeah, that's a big question. How deeply could Bitcoin get woven into H100's future? Maybe even how they interact with customers. Could we see, health services somehow interacting with crypto in this space?
It's speculative, of course.
Totally speculative,
Yeah.
but the CEO's comment definitely hints that way.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit. Jiuzi Holdings. Their plan is much bigger in scope.
Yeah, quite a bit larger. They're aiming to acquire 1,000 Bitcoin over the next year.
1,000 Bitcoin. And how are they planning to buy them?
They mentioned using a mix, issuing more stock, and also using their existing cash.
Okay. And the market reaction for Jiuzi, was it similar?
Not quite as dramatic. Their stock on Nasdaq, ticker JZXN, it saw an increase, but more modest, 7.3% on the day of the announcement.
Still positive, closed at $3.09. But yeah, nothing like the H100 surge.
Right, and that difference in reaction between the two is quite telling, I think.
Why the difference, do you think?
Well, could be a few things. Maybe H100's smaller initial buy was seen as more, unexpected, potentially higher growth for a company that size in health tech.
So more speculative interest, maybe, on the Nordic market.
Possibly. Whereas Jiuzi's much larger plan, announced on Nasdaq, maybe it was viewed with a bit more institutional caution, especially since they mentioned issuing stock to fund part of it.
That dilution factor, perhaps.
Could be. And Jiuzi's CEO, Tal Lee, his reasoning sounded a bit more traditional.
How so?
Well, he talked about strengthening the company's assets, improving risk resistance, boosting profitability. He acknowledged Bitcoin's volatility, but framed it in terms of financial health.
Right. More of a standard balance sheet diversification play, perhaps? Less about the company ethos like with H100.
Exactly. H100 seemed to connect it to their core values, their customers. Jiuzi's explanation sounded more rooted in those traditional financial goals, asset diversification, maybe a hedge against economic uncertainty, things like that.
So, okay, we've got these two companies, pretty different fields, taking similar steps into Bitcoin, but maybe for different reasons.
And definitely getting different market reactions.
Right. So what's the bigger picture here? What should we be taking away from this?
Well, if you zoom out, these aren't just isolated incidents. They're actually part of a growing trend.
Okay.
The news report we looked at cited data from bitcointreasuries.net. Apparently, over 100 public companies now hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets.
Wow, over 100. So it's not really a niche thing anymore.
Not really. So what H100 and Jiuzi are doing, it fits into this larger pattern. Corporations are starting to incorporate Bitcoin into their financial strategies.
It suggests a real shift, maybe, in how some businesses are thinking about managing their reserves, especially in this kind of evolving economic climate.
I think so. And the specific reasons might vary, company to company. Some might be looking for diversification. Others see it as an inflation hedge. Maybe some just believe in the long-term potential of digital assets.
But the overall trend?
The overall trend points towards, well, a growing acceptance and integration of Bitcoin in the corporate finance world.
So for you listening, what are the key takeaways here? We've seen a Swedish health tech firm, a Chinese EV retailer, both making Bitcoin moves. One stock skyrockets, the other gets a more measured bump.
I think the key thing is just how diverse the industries are now that are exploring crypto. It's really not just tech or finance anymore. We're seeing healthcare, automotive retail. Who knows what's next?
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is Bitcoin moving beyond just being a speculative investment? Are companies starting to see it as, I don't know, more fundamental?
Or maybe even, as you suggested with H100, as something tied to their brand identity, their values.
Yeah, that individual empowerment angle.
Right. And this raises big questions about the longer-term implications for investors, for consumers in these sectors.
How so?
Well, could a company holding Bitcoin change its financial stability, its investment choices? Could it even change how they interact with you, their customer, or the kinds of products they offer down the road?
Definitely food for thought. These connections, health tech, EVs, Bitcoin, they seem unexpected at first.
Yeah.
But they really show how dynamic things are, how interconnected different sectors are becoming with the whole world of digital assets.
Absolutely. And maybe that leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on.
Okay.
What other seemingly unrelated industries might we see exploring crypto next? And maybe more importantly, what could be the driving forces behind those decisions?
Yeah, thinking about those underlying motives, the potential long-term impacts. This story definitely feels like it's still unfolding.